Hi, this is Tyler here, speaking in for another Institute Weekly Review. And this week, we're bringing you, inspired by the Red Sea conflict, L3 Harris I sea-based vampire, Indiana military-based targets hypersonic missile tech development, and RTX spawns a new cyber defense business that it called Nightwing, or that they called Nightwing. All right, let's get into it. So, L3 Harris is another defense contractor, as you can kind of tell here, and the vampire system that they're talking about that they want to put in the sea is this little thing that you see on the truck right here. And basically, what it is you have a canister that has up to 4 different, like $22,000 guided munitions that are guided by a laser. And then on the top, that post there's kind of an image sensor. And the whole idea of this is it was like a slap shot. Well, maybe not, that's not the appropriate term, but it was a project that was quickly developed specifically for Ukraine, given that the Ukrainians had to face a lot of drones from the Russians. And they put together this program pretty quickly. And it's kind of like a DIY system. So when they ship it out, the people can basically just attach it to like any truck. It doesn't really matter. And they developed the system like as soon as the conflict started. So it's kind of amazing. And it was really, really successful even. And it kind of looks like this when it's in action. All right, let's see. All right. So just like that. And it's a pretty simple design. It's just laser targeting. It's all guided like that. And one of the reasons that it was so interesting, at least in the sea, is because right now there's the Red Sea conflict, which is happening between the Houthis and various other people who are kind of trying to put their ships through there. The Houthis are relying a lot on drones, and specifically like Iranian kamikaze drones. So inspired by this, L3 Harris's, some CTO or some sort of high-level manager had the idea that perhaps they could apply this same thing on like subs or combat ships that are near surface. So it's really interesting here, and one of the reasons why I thought it was particularly interesting is because it kind of shows how, one, kind of reactive the defense industry is. So we're seeing that they're looking at current threats and they're thinking about developing based off of that. I wonder if that is really the right move. Obviously, you want to know what the trends are, but do we really know if this is necessary? Certainly, one theme or strand that we can see from this is that drones are becoming an increasingly targeted or platform that people want to counter. We see this because, in the Ukraine, everyone's talking about the success of the Ukrainians using it, and then also the success of the Russians using it, prompting the Ukrainians to have to buy this system in the first place. But I think it also opens the door to questions about lower cost air defense. So right here is something that's actually relatively cheap. It's like $22,000, and there's a similar platform by Raytheon. It's a similar kind of interceptor here. It's called the Coyote system. And in the Coyote system, the missile kind of comes out, and it's another drone itself, basically, and it seeks out other drones, as you see here. It has some kind of like explosives, I think, in the top of the thing there. But the interesting thing here is that the Coyote system by Raytheon, or RTX, is about $100,000 per unit. So with the other system over there being DIY, you can just stick it on anything, and then it's only like $22,000 per shot. That's pretty remarkable. Also, as we kind of saw with the canister, like you get 4 different rounds right there, and it looks like they're actually pretty small in comparison to these Coyote drones. So at least is where this is going. I think there's some really good competition here that L3 could offer in this space. Certainly in like this application directly against the Coyote system, there's some merit in terms of just the cost and also the ability to not require a bunch of like sophisticated systems to support it. But if the Coyote is also used in similar places like around the sea, then we're going to probably see RTX's bottom line get cut in around this area. So it will certainly be interesting to see where they go. Another thing that I was really thinking about was like are drones really that effective in the sea, or is it just something that people are using right now? To me, it seems like that really wouldn't really be the case. And what I'm thinking is that these drones, I don't know. I'm not really sure. It's not really a fully formed idea for me, but I don't think that drones are really that big of an issue in the sea. I might be wrong, and I'd certainly like to come back at some later point when I have time to think about that in more detail. But another interesting thing is that in Indiana right now, there's kind of like a hypersonics like hotbed that's developing. So if any of you have been following like hypersonics or any of the technology related to that, a couple years ago, I think about like 2022, Purdue partnered up with a bunch of different universities to make a hypersonics consortium. And Purdue kind of specializes at least in the propulsion aspect of it, and they have a whole group there that's currently working on it. But there is kind of like an initiative from them as well, as you can see in the state of Indiana, to kind of target hypersonics. And that's because this facility right here that you can see they're breaking ground on symbolically, it's the Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane, located in Crane, Indiana. And what they're building here is a missile evaluation and test facility, or METF. And the whole point is that they want to look at hypersonic and test hypersonic missiles with a hardware-in-the-loop kind of setup for naval-based applications. And one of the specific areas that they're really interested in is seeing how these things perform when you fire them from underwater, which is kind of a new area that really no one's really thought of, at least is what they indicate here. But one thing that I also thought was really interesting is that in order to develop this system, or break ground and start their project here, they used internal funds. So this kind of indicates a couple of interesting things about how our defense industrial base kind of really works. So what we're seeing here is that some of these, not really from a top-down perspective, but from the lab perspective, they're projecting ahead based off of where they perceive the value is, and they are saving to try to put themselves higher up in the value chain, which I think illustrates something that's really strong about our system. Here, these actors, they don't have to wait for a top-down directive in order to build this system. They sense, oh, this is really important. I can see based off of my connections, like perhaps with Purdue, that if I were to save my money, I could strengthen not just my expertise, but their expertise, and create a little workforce in this area. So this will be certainly something really interesting to track. It's setting up the whole state of Indiana to kind of be a superstar in terms of hypersonics development. And if I'm correct, I'm fairly certain that there is a startup or something that develops hypersonics that's in like Georgia, which is relatively close to Indiana as well. So them being placed there in Indiana for their test facility is really great. Another thing that's really interesting to consider is what this will do, at least for like jobs in the area. So the kind of applications they're targeting are guidance problems as well. So it's not just, oh, look, we have a missile, but it's like algorithms for how you define it, or how you kind of drive where it's going. So if this place was mostly concerned with like electromagnetic warfare and all that stuff, it seems like that they will be pretty well positioned in terms of at least people that are familiar with targeting and how you untarget something, I guess, with electronic warfare. So that's good as well. But if you're someone around this area that's interested in targeting or guidance problems, then this is also a really, really great opportunity for you as well. So we'll have to see. Tentatively, they're going to try to develop this and get it going around 2025, I think is what they said. And they're targeting like 2030s for the delivery of like their first project where they're actually testing the thing. So we'll have to see how this goes. It's kind of interesting because like this system for a missile test and evaluation, going back to that same last thing that we talked about earlier, it seems like there's kind of this push towards drones that we see from L3 Harris, at least what they're seeing in terms of them wanting to take their anti drone system to the sea. So I wonder if maybe this will, in the long term, kind of be a bad investment if it is true what L3 Harris is eyeing, that drones will become much more important in the future. So that's something to keep tabs on as well. I'm hoping that they have some sort of like setup or whatever so they can keep it good enough for counter UAV type platforms as well, because then they get a lot of bang for their buck. So the last thing we'll talk about here is Nightwing. So as you can see here, this is a relatively new Facebook page, and it's for a relatively new company that spun out of Raytheon or RTX. And basically what RTX did is they sold off this company, and it is basically a cybersecurity type cyber offense, cyber defense company. It takes a lot of the different assets that they had already set up and that they kind of really didn't align with their core interests and puts it all into one place. To me, the striking thing about this was kind of why it would happen. So one of the reasons that was listed in an article that I found was basically just that the core set of products that Nightwing is in charge of were just too far away from where Raytheon, like its central mission is. So it necessitated them basically going off. But another thing that I was thinking about was there's kind of this drive right now in the DoD to kind of enhance all of our cyber everything. So another thing that people have really been eyeing is this so-called zero trust initiative, and they're starting to basically field this or start requiring people to work towards getting towards zero trust cybersecurity. And basically what zero trust is this idea that it's not enough to just say, hey, the perimeters of my networks or whatever are secure. Like once you're in, then I trust you. It's actually that at every point that there's an interaction in that network, you should re-verify and check to make sure that an actor is good. So given that there's kind of this drive or push towards zero trust frameworks for cybersecurity, I wonder if perhaps one of the reasons they spun out was to give Nightwing more flexibility in this space to kind of make their big splash or something like that. And because think about it like this, one of the things that they really want to do with this zero trust policy is they want to have multi-factor identification, they want to have targets and basically ways to figure out what each device is, who it's contacted with, and how it interacts. And they also want to do like real-time data analytics to see like how these devices interact and try to predict what is anomalous behavior. So that, to me doesn't sound like missile stuff. So perhaps Nightwing being ready for that, that would be really good. And another thing is Nightwing already has as a part of its portfolio something that it's worked on where it does real-time basically tracking of people or surveillance. So if you kind of go and theory craft a little bit, it's not really that much harder to go from like a real-time like surveillance platform that you might use to like counter terrorists or something like that to something that you would do to just kind of check stuff in your network. So this will be really interesting to see if this actually shakes things up, at least in terms of the defense industrial base. Another thing that I really thought was kind of interesting was the leadership team. There were, like, by and large, it seemed like most of the people on this leadership team were basically just finance bros, which is fine. Except for one person, I think her name was Lori Scherer. She had a background as like an aerospace engineer or something, and then eventually she became a system engineer, and she worked at MIT RE. But to me, when someone has like a systems engineering master's, as she did, it's hard to tell if they were actually like a doer at some point in their career, or if like basically they were always a manager, because system engineer can mean anything from I'm an algorithms wizard and like I am a systems integrator, like someone who does some real stuff, all the way to someone that basically just sits there and reads requirements document all day. So or also on the other end of that spectrum, someone who's barely an engineer at all, they're literally just a manager. So I'm looking at the people that are in charge of all this, and I kind of have some doubt as to whether or not this company is just kind of like a catch to try to make a lot of money at a time when cyber is kind of like this like buzzword and everyone's thinking, oh my God, China is like, doing all these nefarious campaigns to steal all this data from us. I wonder if this is like a finance bro thing to try to take advantage of that higher level interest in security, as well as like rebrand in order to like maybe search engine optimize or something. Because like with Raytheon, you're going to have to compete at least in a search engine kind of optimization way with their image as like a missile platform. So when I see that most everyone on the team is like perhaps not an implementer, it makes me think that they're not really interested in like actually solving problems, but more or less just capitalizing off of interest in buzzwords. So we'll have to see, but I wish them luck. But if you look at the likes and followers, they got a long way to go before they're probably considered like a bigwig company like Raytheon or Boeing. But at least for the backlog here, there's a couple of different things that we could think about, right? So we saw, let's go back here. So we saw, the Vampire system, which is kind of a low-cost alternative that was thought of as going to the sea because they saw that there were some threats that they were reacting to currently. And then we see Indiana base kind of react to some of the developments related to people local to them, at the University of Purdue, which is about like an hour and a half away, to start, teaming up and forming maybe something that would form a collaboration. And then these guys here reacting possibly to the enhanced requirements for security to make a new company. And really, when I look at all this, I just see a lot of like, I guess, really, except for the middle one here, Indiana military base, everything here is kind of somewhat reactive. If I'm right that this Nightwing biz is basically trying to take advantage of just, oh, hey, look, people are interested in like enhanced cybersecurity. So I think that's kind of a problem. I think there needs to be more people out there that are basically just like pushing to say, look, I'm gonna build something and I'm gonna make the other guys react to me. So it would be interesting if some of these guys started putting something in their portfolio that was like, oh, look, react to me. And maybe that's what these guys are doing. But at least with the hypersonics thing, they're not really looking ahead. They're basically saying, hey, look, someone asked me for hypersonics because it's a part of the NDAA. So I would just wonder if we can find instances of non-reactivity. But that's what we'll conclude with for today. This has been your Institute Weekly Review with Tyler doing a solo show. And we'll see you next week. Hopefully Mason's back, and hopefully he'll have a new crib by